Yeah, so good to see some familiar faces. And yes, Eliza, it's really cool to see you bubbling back around. Hey, Crystal, nice to have you join us in the room. I'm so excited to talk to you, Sierra. I always am, but I feel like, yeah, it's you've really timed this all perfectly. Every week that these things unfold, it's like just the right timing, and I'm so excited to dig in. How are you today?
I am doing well. I think I mentioned to you yesterday, I'm feeling a bit tired. I'm doing well. I think I mentioned to you yesterday, I'm feeling a bit tired and worn down myself. So it's definitely appropriate that we're going to talk about burnout today. For anyone who's unaware, this is our weekly Twitter space. We have this Twitter space every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Myself, Juju Mama, and Indigo Girl Abby from Elevate. We have this weekly space where we just talk about business, entrepreneurship, wellness, stress management, and stuff like that. So today's topic is burnout. How are you feeling, Abby?
I had a really lovely weekend kind of taking care of some burnout, and I'm still sort of worn out from it, but it was such a lovely exchange. I've got a big ass smile on my face, but yeah, my 46-year-old body is still kind of like, okay, lady, you can't, I'm not used to camping and such, but I had an amazing time. But yeah, I'm still a little worn out from all of it. When you said burnout, I felt like we needed one of those bear, 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 bear things that they play in the shill spaces because, like, wah, 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 we all know it and we all feel it, but I have to say, I love what you named the space because first you kind of have to recognize it, right? You have to kind of recognize that you're actually experiencing it instead of kind of minimizing it. And I think that that was a good place to name this because I don't know that everybody always really wants to admit it, right?
Absolutely. And also, it just looks different for everyone. Like, every person is different. And I feel like burnout kind of manifests in each of us differently. So, for me, like, my red flags or warning feelings for like burnout is approaching might be different than someone else's. But it's undeniable that being or feeling burnt out has serious effects on your emotional, your physical health, every aspect of your life. So let's kind of get into it. Let's start with just like a quick definition of burnout for anyone who does. Well, I think everyone in this room, because I know there's some project owners in here. There are some just like really hardworking entrepreneurs in here. Like, I know we've all probably experienced burnout at some point, but essentially burnout is usually characterized by like kind of feeling overwhelmed by stress or commitment here. There are some just like really hardworking entrepreneurs in here. Like I know we've all probably experienced burnout at some point, but essentially burnout is usually characterized by like kind of feeling overwhelmed by stress or commitments. Maybe this feeling that like you can't keep up. Maybe this feeling that like you're about to have a breakdown or like you're about to shut down completely. Maybe this feeling that like you're having trouble sleeping despite the fact that you're like super exhausted. Maybe this feeling that you're not as motivated or excited about certain things as you used to be. Excited about certain things as you used to be. I feel like as a business owner, burnout it's kind of normal and it creeps in after, especially doing the same thing for so long. You can kind of just not that it's not fun or cool anymore, but you can kind of just lose your excitement for it. So that's kind of my definition of burnout. How would you define burnout, Abby?
Well, when I think all of those things are leading up to burnout, the things that you were talking about. When I think about burnout, when I see someone really out, like has definitely burnt out, not approaching, I see, folks not feeling as much hope as they used to, or not being able to plan for the future, or, kind of feel kind of teetering on that depressed state of hopelessness. And to me, that's when someone's fully reached it. So I think definitely recognizing when we're on our way to that, so that we don't get to that state, is definitely why these conversations are so important. Because we all have stress. It's just a matter of recognizing it and managing it. And I think some of us tend to be, we're all really talented people, and we're superheroes in our own mind, as we should be, but we are only human. And sometimes I know I've been guilty of this, and hardworking people in my life have been guilty of this, and hardworking people in my life have been guilty of kind of minimizing, like, I don't need a break. We pretend like we're not going to need one, right? So I think actual burnout is when you have reached that point where you were overworked, undervalued, and you are just at that point of absolute frazzled, and you have lost some hope. To me, that's like beyond all the red flags. That's burnout is happening. The ship is sinking. SOS, Mayday, Mayday. So that's like I said, why I think it's so good to have these conversations, so we can never get to that point, because once you're there, it's a whole different set of tools we need, right? To pull something out of a sinking to pull a sinking ship up than it would be to prevent us from going in the first place, you know?
Absolutely. And burnout can also like trigger different responses in people. Like, I know some people who become depressed or anxious as a result of their burnout, or some people who slip into like drug abuse or like kind of fall into addiction patterns or habits, kind of as a coping mechanism to relieve the sensation of burnout. Quick pause. Welcome, Heather. Happy to see you here. Welcome, Rita. Welcome, Jessica. Welcome, NFT therapist. Welcome, Dirty Little Bruja. Happy to see you here. Thank you for coming to our Twitter space. Today we're talking about burnout. Okay, Abby, so you were just mentioning like recognizing burnout, like before it's too late. Like, so for me, I feel like some like warning signs that burnout is approaching, or like I usually start to feel myself getting really impatient. Like, not that I have all the patience in the world, but I'm a relatively patient person. And once I start to feel myself like getting impatient with myself and other people, for like no reason, I'm like, okay, where is this coming from? Like, why am I feeling so sensitive? So impatience will come up. And it's so funny that we're having this conversation right after last week's conversation about boundaries, because some of like, I have a lot of similar kind of feelings that come up when burnout is approaching, that also come up when like my boundaries aren't being honored. Because you can also kind of start to feel resentful, as you're starting to feel burnout, maybe toward yourself for like overburdening yourself, maybe toward the other people who have like expectations of you, or that you've committed yourself to, and they're like looking for you to perform or do something for them. So definitely like these feelings of impatience or resentment will start to come up. And then honestly, just this mental exhaustion of just like, my mind cannot think, cannot put things together, cannot like do any critical analysis. Like, I'll kind of start, I guess it's a mental fog that I'll start to experience, where I just get really cloudy and it just becomes super hard to be productive. What about you, Abby? What are some like signs that burnout is approaching for you?
That brain fog is something that is definitely a sign for me. I have actually approached actual burnout last year, after we went through some really difficult times with the construction of our building going really awry, and we're still kind of dealing with that. And I did hit what I can only describe as a real breakdown of my nervous system, and excuse me, one of the biggest symptoms was brain fog. Definitely not being able to, I normally have things together. I mean, I can be a little bit of a flake, but I think clearly, and I think of many things all at the same time. And I like to have several projects going at once. And when I, definitely brain frog, ba- brain fog of not being able to really collect those thoughts in a focused way, is very stressful feeling, and leaves you feeling a bit helpless, right? Stutter over your words with the brain fog to go along with it, 1,000%. And that just kind of inability to like complete tasks, like executive dysfunction would kick in for sure, and have that sense of overwhelm of, well, I have 10 things going, I don't know how to prioritize them, because of that fog, and just feeling sort of frozen. And then that sparks this whole other set of emotions, right, that go with it. You feel badly about yourself, that you're not doing the things that you know you can or should do, and then you're afraid to ask for help, and all those things kind of spiral. So, recognizing, as you said, before you ever get there, taking care of your nervous system before you ever get there. And one of the biggest things you can do is just recognizing we all need help. Yeah, we have superpowers, but all of us have our own strengths, but also areas that we could really benefit from kind of linking up with other people who have those superpowers that we don't have so that we can lighten the load and that burden. Like you said, this week's conversation ties in so well with last week's because really they go hand in hand. We have to be able to express what our boundaries are, know what our boundaries are so that we can really come to understand ourselves and where our burnout is going to show up. So I think, like you said, those things go hand in hand so well.
Love that you mention asking for help. Um, I feel like this is like a good point to kind of start transition into talking about burnout recovery. Because like I mentioned, it's like we all know ourselves and we know the feelings, the trademark feelings of like, uh-oh, I'm about to reach my limit. Like for me also burnout doesn't mean just like you're curling up in a ball and like doing nothing. Like some people actually respond to burnout by like having these fits of anger or like these really emotional outbursts. So it does depend. Like growing up in my household, I knew that my mom was burnt out when like she snapped on us for like the littlest things, like or like it'd be something like she'd be like, you didn't load the dishwasher right. And I'm like, ooh, you must be burnt out, mama, because at least I loaded the dishwasher. So it's like sometimes burnout will also, like I mentioned, this impatience, it could also manifest as just like kind of these outbursts, these emotional outbursts that we have as a response to just like, as Abby mentioned, overcommitting, not knowing our own boundaries, not knowing our own limits. So yeah, let's talk about like burnout recovery. Like we've reached the end of our rope and we're feeling depleted and we know that it's time to fill our cup back up, but like where do we start? Where do we start? So Abby mentioned ask for help, which I think is a great place to start. Most of us have some type of support system. It might not be our family, but it could be a close friend, it could be a colleague, could be your neighbor. Who knows? Most of us have at least one person in our support system who we can go to vent, to share our honest thoughts, to connect with. Leaning on your support system and asking for help is really the best thing that you can do to kind of get out of the burnout feeling, and something that I've started doing a lot because burnout for me kind of comes in waves every month. I've mentioned several times I have PMDD. PMDD is really bad PMS, and cyclically every month before my menstrual cycle, I get these same feelings of just like emotional overwhelm, low physical energy, and like I know it's coming. So something that's helped me a lot is leaning on my support system of my husband and like not overextending myself during the times that I know I'm not going to have the energy to. So this asking for help also really ties into learning your limits and your own personal capacity, and learning to honor your own boundaries and not overcommit yourself, and learning to say no to the things that are inessential. There are other things as well, but I'm curious, what do you think, Abby? What are your kind of tips and tricks in terms of burnout recovery?
I think it's kind of like looking the same way you manage a lot of things in your life, right? Like saving for a rainy day. I think sometimes you have to think ahead a little bit and know that, look, I know if I go too long without some form of body work, for example, or some sort of thing that really fills my own cup back up again, instead of pretending like not overextending myself during the times that I know I'm not going to have the energy to. So this asking for help also really ties into learning your limits and your own personal capacity, and learning to honor your own boundaries and not overcommit yourself, and learning to say no to the things that are inessential. There are other things as well, but I'm curious, what do you think, Abby? What are your kind of tips and tricks in terms of burnout recovery? I think it's kind of like looking the same way you manage a lot of things in your life, right? Like saving for a rainy day. I think sometimes you have to think ahead a little bit and know that, look, I know if I go too long without some form of body work, for example, or some sort of thing that really fills my own cup back up again, instead of pretending I'm never going to need that, right? Instead of just like, I'm not going to plan any live music this summer. Like when I know that that's what fills my cup, I'm going to plan ahead and do it. That you might have to be creative in ways you get things done if you're maybe limited in resources or whatever it might be, but planning ahead and being proactive and knowing that I have got to plan to take some sort of time for myself. And again, if you're limited in resources, you just have to be creative about how you're going to do it, but work it into to your plan, to your schedule. Look ahead months in advance if you have to, and give yourself something to look forward to. That's definitely something I've tried to do. Sometimes, you might express what your needs are, but not all the people in your life might agree that you need it in that way or might be able to hear or understand what your needs are. So we have to really build this inner resilience. As you said, we all kind of handle and manage stress differently. And sometimes we might not have the support immediately in our lives that we think we do. And so I cannot stress enough counseling, especially online counseling. There are really wonderful resources out there that are a lot more affordable than it used to be and so much more comfortable than it used to be. Listen, I'm a big supporter rather of everything natural. I load myself with crystals like you do, and I love yoga and meditation and all of these things. But I also think that any support we can find to help ourselves build this emotional intelligence and this resilience so that we can manage our stress is a way to reach out and get some support if we're maybe not getting it in all the ways we elsewhere. So just, I hate to rule that out. So I always like to push that out there, but that's been a useful tool. And I don't even necessarily do it every month, but I make sure at least a few times a year, whether it be the change of the seasons or whatever it might be, I look ahead and make sure at least for a month at a time, here or there, that I'm filling that part of my cup as well, and being proactive.
Beautifully said. And thank you for the reminder that not everyone has a support system. I think sometimes those of us who do have support systems might take it for granted and might think that it's the norm or the expectation. And there are definitely people out there without that, who are struggling with just feeling not seen or not heard or lonely. And I totally feel that taking time to talk to a therapist or a mentor, just someone who you trust, who can give you some level-headed feedback or direction, is always a good move. And so glad you mentioned like lifestyle changes. I feel like when you're trying to recover from burnout, it's like the last time, it's like the most it's the most difficult time to start to like implement lifestyle changes, but honestly it's usually the biggest sign that like you need to implement some lifestyle changes. So I'm so glad you mentioned that. Like for me, I know burnout is coming when several days have elapsed without me going outside or exercising. Like that is just like a personal red flag for me. And a lot of times I won't notice it. It'll be like my husband, he's like, "Did you go to yoga this week?" And I'm like, "Oh, actually, I didn't." Or I'd be like, "Did you take Bubby, our dog? Did you take Bubby outside for a walk this week?" "Oh, no." I didn't actually. And then it's like, what have I been doing? It's like, girl, you've been sitting in a house with like artificial light and like no fresh oxygen, no physical movement. Like, what do you expect is going to happen? But I think sometimes those of us who work remote or at home a lot, we can kind of get into these like funks, where it's hard to like motivate ourselves to do something different. So that being said, back to basics, back to basics. Like when you're struggling with burnout, it's really important to get back into those core areas of your life that maintain your life. And by that, I mean diet, exercise, sleep. Like at our foundational, most basic needs, like you need to eat decent food, you need to move around a bit, and you need to get a decent amount of sleep. And like evaluating those few kind of cornerstones, you'd be surprised. Sometimes burnout will come just from eating a poor diet because your body is just like nutritionally empty and just like looking for some real vitamins or nutrients. I'll feel burnt out after vacation after eating really bad several days in a row. And by eating bad, I'm like, I think we can all agree like no one should be eating pizza 3 days in a row. But hey, like sometimes you're traveling or you're on a trip and it's like that. So back to basics and then I know Abby talks about stress management all the time, and I feel like having a daily practice of stress management is so key. And again, this is different for everyone. Some people manage their stress by meditating or doing yoga. Other people manage their stress by creating art or making music. It really depends on the individual, but ultimately prioritizing self-care is kind of what it boils down to. Maybe you take a staycation and you don't have to spend money and take an extravagant trip to a spa or anything like that. You just kind of chill at home and unplug for a few days. Maybe you take a brief walk in nature just to get some fresh air and some vitamin D, and just, unplug, take a real break from screen time and from digital work, will go a long way. I see we have a request, and I would love to welcome you to the stage. Let me see if I can figure out how to. There we go. Just a quick note, this is not a shill space, but you're welcome to add to the conversation, and thank you for being here. I think you should be able to talk, depressed citizens.
Hi, sorry. I think I broke for a little moment. I couldn't hear anything else. Well, everybody, hi. Very glad to be here in the space. I think the topic of conversation is very important. I think, especially here in the space, Web3, we all experience some kind of burnout at some point. And I'm also a person who struggles with ADHD. So programming your time and not leaving everything until the last moment is really like a stressful situation. And so I had neglected that side of me for many years until I finally had to come to that realization that so many mental like when we you are a neurodivergent person, it's not okay not like to neglect that part of yourself, because you really need to go deep into knowing who you are, knowing your strengths, and also knowing when you need some kind of support, sometimes mental support as well. And I think this is something that I came to learn very recently, that I cannot, even though I thought I could, not control my ADHD on my own. So I just wanted to comment that on everybody that is here that may be feeling outcasted or constantly, because I was constantly burned out. And if you are feeling like that, I think it's okay to be neurodivergent, but just try to seek for, to get yourself to know better, and also to get the help that you need to go through that struggle. Because I went through an anxiety crisis, and let me tell you that it's not something that you want to be dealing with. Especially, it's not going to let you move forward with your project or even with your life. So, yeah, I just wanted to comment on that because I thought the topic was very important.
Thank you so much for coming up and speaking on that. It is very important, and I appreciate that perspective so much. I have to share, I'm 46 years old, and I've been in the wellness industry for 23 years. And for a long time, I was very guilty of denying myself medication and kind of buying into that belief that all of us always need all natural things. And I certainly believe that that's a beautiful path for a lot of us. But I also encourage people not to rule out or discount medication if that is something that they need for their mental health, because at the end of the day, it is of the utmost importance that we take care of our brain, our nervous system, and for us to be alive at the end of the day. And there are a lot of ways we can find support and resources, and it comes in many forms, and they're all on the table. And there's no judgment about any of them, as long as you are you're not harming yourself or others, and you are finding support. Take care of that brain and that nervous system. Heavens, yes. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Deprech, for coming up and speaking on that. It is very important, and I appreciate that perspective so much. I have to share, I'm 46 years old, and I've been in the wellness industry for 23 years. And for a long time, I was very guilty of denying myself medication and kind of buying into that belief that all of us always need all natural things. And I certainly believe that that's a beautiful path for a lot of us. But I also encourage people not to rule out or discount medication if that is something that they need for their mental health, because at the end of the day, it is of the utmost importance that we take care of our health, because at the end of the day, it is of the utmost importance that we take care of our brain, our nervous system, and for us to be alive at the end of the day. And there are a lot of ways we can find support and resources, and it comes in many forms, and they're all on the table. And there's no judgment about any of them, as long as you you are you're not harming yourself or others, and you are finding support, take care of that brain and that nervous system. Heavens, yes. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Depressed.
Yeah, I think there's something that you said that I think is so important, because the reason why I didn't treat my ADHD for so many years is because, in around me, in I think also I was born in the 90s, and I think by then was just the moment when it was started to become like a more study thing. But in my environment, it was very stigmatized. The medication that you required, it's very stigmatized. Because some people use it for other things that are not related to a mental issue. So I think that those beliefs stopped me many times into getting a proper treatment, and that got me into going through depressions every year. Every year, I was just going through a depression and then not going, like feeling better. But you create your own coping systems, and you live into this anxiety constantly without anybody else knowing but you. So it's true what you say. I think natural things are great, and there are many things that you can learn. Like in ADHD, for example, you can learn behavioral knowing but you. So it's true what you say. I think natural things are great, and there are many things that you can learn. Like in ADHD, for example, you can learn behavioral therapy. Which is going to teach you how to cope with many things in your life. However, don't rule out the things that you need in the medical aspect of it. So yeah, I think it's something very important to take into account.
Thank you so much for your vulnerability. Thank you for sharing. I do think it's important to note that all of our brains are different, and neurodivergent people specifically, their brains develop or work differently than what's considered to be the normal or the traditional situation. So neurodivergent people have different experiences and interactions, and kind of introvergent people have different experiences and interactions, and kind of interpret the world just in a unique and different way. So thank you for coming up and providing that perspective. We really appreciate it. And also want to welcome Danielle up to the stage as well, who requested the mic. Thank you for joining us, Danielle.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Have you not met depressed citizens before?
I think this is our first time talking in this space.
Oh my gosh. So this this is so funny. Like, I realize how much of a connector I really am, because I assume everybody knows each other, but we don't. So I'm really happy y'all met. Both of you, all three of you, are so amazing. So that's really great.
I feel like perhaps we've been in another space together before, but yeah, I really appreciate getting to know you here in this space, and this conversation very much. How are you, my friend Dakayo?
I'm very good. I'm loving your conversation. The reason I requested the mic was actually when you said that you denied yourself medication, because that's something that I'm really familiar with. I just feel like I self stigmatize more than anyone I know. And it's like, it's interesting, because the reason I know that is because my Zoloft makes me lose an inordinate amount of weight. And I love fitting into a size 2 and like not having an appetite, but for some reason, like, because I've had eating disorders for my whole life, like, for some reason, being associated with taking medication for mental health disturbs me more than like not being a size 2, which is weird. And all of it, trauma therapy has helped me get over all of that to a certain extent, and I'm still working on it. But it's just interesting how powerful that self-stigma can be, because I really, like, I'm so judgmental and hard on myself for everything, but like that judgment really took me off guard, and I really hope, like, in my experience, I've just had to hit rock bottom every time before I do what's necessary for me. But I hope that that's not the case for everyone. And I do feel like I've gotten better at recognizing my tells, like, I can tell if I'm about to burn out, and I either tell someone, I address it. Um, and, the more that I just kind of intuitively sense these things, because I do have a lot of trauma and I have been disassociated from my body. the more that I recognize those tells, the more that, I have energy to do the things like meditate and use crystals and do magic and go on runs and stuff like that. The stuff that can really, really keep your mental health good. But if you're in a really bad place, it's going to be hard to find anything that can bring you out without something extreme or drastic. And I just hope that not everybody needs to get to that point.
Thank you for sharing that. And I agree. I hope the same. I think I've been in seasons of my life where management by crisis, as you kind of alluded to there, was my method as well. But I did that enough that I kind of broke. I definitely have had those that moment where I've broken, yeah, I'm on the other side of it, and because of that, it's humbling to be in that experience, but I think it's helped me to be a little bit more proactive. I will say, side note, I in my early 20s when I first was diagnosed with a panic disorder, Zoloft is what they had me on, and it definitely numbed me, and I definitely was non-reactive. It just kind of made me not give a shit in general, and I wasn't really able to enjoy sex while I was on it. And so I made the dumb mistake of just taking myself off. You shouldn't do that either. You should step down and work with your doctor. And then because of that, I didn't love that experience. And then I got into wellness and natural health. I avoided that for 20 years, but a low dose of Lexapro, I have no side effects. I still can enjoy my sensations in my body and not feel like I'm on any medication or any of those things. But I can also, go to the mall and ride an airplane and things like that. When my panic disorder kicked back in, it's a horrible thing to deal with, and I'm grateful not to deal
Did
with
you
it.
say management of prices? I didn't catch the P word after management.
I'm not. Oh, I said so many things in a stream of consciousness. Can you say the whole sentence? I'm so sorry.
So you said that I alluded to something and you said
Oh,
management
management
of.
management by crisis, like waiting till it's really bad.
Oh,
Management
got it.
managed
Got
by
it. There we go.
crisis. Yes, yes, rather than, being proactive. I definitely have been managed by crisis in seasons of my life, but I now, and honestly, it's having 3 kids has been a huge teacher to me to, time management is stress management, planning ahead, being proactive, all those things allow me to be a bit less anxious in my present moment. But yeah, it's just life is really really kicked the shit out of me and humbled me. I said so many things in a stream of consciousness. Can you say the whole sentence? I'm so sorry.
So you said that I alluded to something and you said
Oh,
management of.
management by crisis, like waiting till it's really bad.
Oh,
Management
got it.
managed
Got
by
it. There we go.
crisis. Yes, yes, rather than, being proactive. I definitely have been managed by crisis in seasons of my life, but I now, and honestly, it's having 3 kids has been a huge teacher to me to, time management is stress management, planning ahead, being proactive, all those things allow me to be a bit less anxious in my present moment. But yeah, it's just life is really really kicked the shit out of me and humbled me to help me understand those things in this next phase of my life. Oh, Juju Mama, I've had the floor a lot. What do you have to all this?
I love, love, love where the conversation is going. I do think that we all have our own stigma and we all have our own way of like judging ourselves or being hard on ourselves. I have a lot of I have a lot of Virgo placements in my chart, so I am a pretty self-critical person and can definitely relate. I feel like the way that some of us struggle with accepting that we might need to take medication, I feel like some of us also struggle critical person and can definitely relate. I feel like the way that some of us struggle with accepting that we might need to take medication, I feel like some of us also struggle with accepting that we might just like need to talk to a therapist or a professional. I for me, I feel like I was a little more open to that than taking medication, but sometimes they go hand in hand. And it's also interesting how gender kind of plays into it. I can't help but notice because I do know most of the people in the room. It's mostly women here. I know that there are a few men, but for the most part, it's a lot of ladies in here. And not, I don't want to say that women are more self-aware, but my experience when it comes to like taking a mood regulating medicine or talking to a therapist, I don't know. I have found that women seem to be a bit more open to it in general. And just speaking from my own personal experience, leading up to my wedding a couple months ago, my husband was getting very, very, very anxious, and it was just really out of his character. He's not an anxious person, but just everything leading up to the wedding was just making him feel really, really stressed out to the point where he was not himself. And for the first time ever, he decided, okay, maybe I should talk to someone, and started talking to a therapist and kind of talking through his issues. And it was so impactful for him. And we talked about it in a lot. And a huge part of it was him overcoming this stigma that he had in his mind that, like, if I talk to a therapist, there's something wrong with me, or I'm a crazy person, or like, like I'm not okay. And kind of overcoming those thoughts, he was able to just like finally do it. Yeah, Danielle, what's up?
I think that there's a lot of men who talk about mental health and that's a vibe, but it's a very different vibe. I join a lot of mental health spaces that are run by men as well. And I guess I feel like they do get really open, but after they've reached a certain point, whereas women are more able to talk about it as we're still struggling. And, I think it's helpful to, you know, be able to show up when, I might have a panic attack tomorrow, but today I can talk about the things that I've been dealing with and help other people.
I do want to take just a quick moment to let anyone who wants to come up and join us as a speaker, just let you know that you're welcome to request a mic. If you've been enjoying the conversation, there's something you want to add, you are more than welcome to. We're approaching like the last 15 to 20 minutes or so of this space. So if there is something you want to add, now would be a good time to request the mic. Sorry to cut you off, Abby.
Not at all. You didn't at all. We were both quick draw McGraws there. I was just going to add, I think that all people, but probably particularly men here in our Western society anyway, we're all really kind of taught not to deal with our emotions or feel our emotions from a very early age. And so once we get to it, there's been a lot of things that have layered on top of that very early conditioning and conditioned experience. And so I think, the more we can encourage people to feel their feelings, and I think certain mindful practices like breath work can it's as simple as that. It's as simple things like we kind of started the conversation with, as you said, Sarah. It's the simplest things like getting enough rest on a regular schedule, feeding your body mostly things that are going to nourish it, and in a balanced way. And yeah, have fun, live a little, but things that are going to keep your body working in a way that's beneficial to you and optimal to you, and moving your body in the same ways that support all those things. Those are all such easy things that are within our control, and those are the first things that kind of go out the window when we're feeling taxed or overwhelmed or overworked, undervalued, all the things that lead into that burnout. It really is as simple as taking care of our nervous systems. I don't even know where I started with that. I kind of got on a tangent, but
Do you
yes.
feel like there's a difference between the mental health spaces that men run and this one per se? Because I don't know. I really do. I hadn't thought about that comparison between like women talk during the crisis and men tend to be at a different level of stability when they talk about their mental health issues. I don't know if it's that or not.
100%. I think it really is true. Men are from Mars and women are from Venus, like that book from the 80s or whatever said on a tangent. But
Do you
yes.
feel like there's a difference between the mental health spaces that men run and this one per se? Because I don't know. I really do. I hadn't thought about that comparison between like women talk during the crisis and men tend to be at a different level of stability when they talk about their mental health issues. I don't know if it's that or not.
100%. I think it really is true. Men are from Mars and women are from Venus, like that book from the 80s or whatever said. I think it's so true. We handle our stress so differently. We view it so differently. Men tend to steer away from things that might make them feel like a failure or like they've done something wrong. And often, have this binary view of black and white. Whereas I think that women tend to be a bit more, for lack of a better word, in a weird way, but circular in our thinking. Things aren't quite as linear, perhaps. These are, of course, generalizations, but yes, I do notice a difference. And I think it has to do a little bit with our conditioned experience surrounding emotions and what we're taught to think of emotions. Men want to button that up because it might be out of control if anyone starts to get too deep into that stuff. I could be wrong. This could be my own projection, but yeah. What do
Well,
you guys think?
my Venus is in Virgo, just like Sierra was talking about Virgo placements. Yeah, my Venus is in Virgo and my Mars is in Scorpio. So I don't really think I fit either of those bills, but I do think, like a lot of people do. And I definitely have different experiences when I'm in spaces that are primarily with women and spaces that are primarily with men. And, both have value to me.
I wonder if, I don't know, I wonder if it has anything to do with just the hormonal nature of women. Men have an experience, like our hormones are our body's little chemical messengers, and they're doing so many things and affecting us in so many ways. And for men, I wish I knew what this experience was like, but they're kind of on this like stable roller, it's not a roller coaster, it's like a fun go-kart ride of testosterone that men have, and it's not like up and down and in a loop. But for women, it's like our hormones are literally doing a roller coaster every 28 to 35 days. Like, unless you're not menstruating yet or you're experiencing menopause, these are a bit different hormonal experiences. But for most women in your teens to childbearing years, you're kind of on this monthly roller coaster. And I do feel like our hormones kind of affect our emotions and our experiences and kind of paint the background of our life, if that makes any sense.
It does make sense. It does absolutely make sense. I am I hate to even say it out loud because it'll stop, but it looks like I'm in menopause. So but 1,000%, and especially in those years leading up to that, it's no fucking joke, and it ain't for sissies. You know what I mean? And certainly that does play into things more than we even talk about. I do think all human bodies go through different shifts and things like this. But I do think that roller coaster is not always recognized, right? When we're thinking about burnout and thinking about how we approach situations and conversations, and that being, as you said, kind of the I forget what you said about the background, but that's 100% there, and to be valued and acknowledged, to be sure.
One other little kind of not cheat code, but just like burnout coping mechanism that I want.
Thinking about burnout and thinking about how we approach situations and conversations, and that being, as you said, kind of the I forget what you said about the background, but that's 100% there, and to be valued and acknowledged, to be sure.
One other little kind of not cheat code, but just like burnout coping mechanism that I wanted to share is just related to kind of journaling or having a diary. I've always been a writer. Like since I learned how to write, I've kept a pretty regular diary or journal, and it's not anything nuts. Like usually what I've actually come to realize as I approach 30 is that it's actually not a journal or a diary. It's a stress diary. Like because I went to look back at it one day and I was like, damn girl, you're always upset. Like, why is everything you write in here like you're crying or mad, or like there's never any happy moments in your diary? And then my brain, like something unlocked, and I was like, oh, this is my stress diary. And I suddenly realized like what I'm doing is like when I'm feeling stressed or upset, like I'm kind of using my diary to check in with myself so that I can like better understand my triggers and manage them better in the future. And despite the fact that like looking back on my diary, it feels like I'm just like venting or complaining all the time, when you read in between the lines, it actually provides a lot of context as to like different things that bother me, or things that might feel stressed or worried or upset or anxious or angry, and kind of help me unpack and feel those feelings in a different way. So I do think that if you have a writing practice, it could be a good tool to help manage burnout. I know not everyone's a writer, but just putting it out there.
Better out than in, as Shrek says. I think you're absolutely right. I had a teacher, and maybe I mentioned this already in this space, but teacher Jeff Masters, who talks about issues in the tissues, that we store all of our stress, all of our trauma, all of our past experiences, all of our triggers, all of these things get stored in the literal tissues of our bodies. And whatever methods we can use to get it out, and writing is a beautiful way to do that. Like you said, if you're not a writer, fucking interpretive dance, throw on your favorite, music and dance your ass off. But better out than in. We've got to find ways of not just holding on to the things that weigh us down, but really getting them out through some method. So I feel like I'm echoing. Am I?
A little bit.
Welcome to the stage, Ethereal Moon and Co. We're happy to have you. There was a little echo toward the end. Thanks for joining the conversation.
Hi, guys. I just thought I'd chime in because I just felt like this chat was like perfect timing. I just got done with a appointment with a neurologist because I have been getting like headaches and such. And I just wanted to chime in because, talking about medications and like natural remedies. I mean, as a neurologist, she like straight up told me like, off the bat, like, you know, on the path of your life, yes, I will have to journal. She wanted me to get a journal. She wanted me to be more physically active, and she wanted me to have a healthier diet. So, I mean, it could be as simple as, something like that. And then, she paired me with taking some vitamin supplements, which I'm trying to get regular, at, and take those regularly on a daily basis. And then she also prescribed me something, and it was a different kind of medication than I've ever like been, introduced to or suggested for. But I myself took Zoloft, and I felt myself like a zombie. And then I too, just decided to stop taking it without going back and like, readjusting my prescription with my doctor or speaking to her about a change. Um, Mind you, this was when I was like 21, younger, and I don't know. I guess I just kind of like put it off and didn't really take my mental health that seriously. But now it's like where it is affecting, like me physically. I'm not really sure what it's coming from, but I am like I had to get like literal um I think it's called EGK and like an MRI or something like that. Um, Something for your brain, like CAT scans basically, and I'm going to go find out, what the verdict is here in a few weeks. But the thing about the medication that happened with me with the neurologist was just that she was trying to prescribe me Cymbalta. You guys may have heard of it because it was on TV infomercials at one point, I believe. But also, it was a what's it called? I forgot what it's called. It's just like a highly addictive kind of like medication. I don't know. I forgot the word. My mind went totally blank. And so I was afraid to like continue with that. But definitely I do want to take something that I feel would be safe for me. Maybe Lexapro would be, a good one for me. Um, and then at the same time taking therapy. Um, but yeah, that's just my own personal, journey at this time. And then yeah, I just kind of want to like regulate, my nervous system. And just like a fun fact, guys, before I'm done speaking here, that like dogs, whenever they shake, they're basically like readjusting their nervous systems, because it's like, and that might be good, for you guys too. You can actually shake your body, or I don't know if you guys, heard about the tapping method. And then like, exercising and dancing could be like your type of movement of getting that um you know that energy out. um so yeah, so that you can regulate your body. But yeah, I'm glad that everybody joined in, and it's very important for our mental health. Some of us are working and trying to run an online business. We're young women. We do go through a lot of stressful stuff, and I'm just glad that we all have a safe space to just kind of talk and listen, and know that we're not like alone. And yeah, just have like an adult conversation about it. So this was very nice.
But yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your vulnerability. I appreciate your time. So happy to have you here. Everyone's journey is definitely different. And the more of us who come up and speak and kind of share about our unique and individual experience, the better. And I think it's so interesting that you mentioned EFT. So, for anyone who's not aware, EFT is the emotional freedom technique. And it's also sometimes called tap therapy. And it's basically like an alternative therapy that's kind of similar to acupuncture, where you target certain areas of your body that might have some pent up tension, and you literally with your finger you tap on them to stimulate these pressure points, and through this repetitive tapping, you can kind of soothe the stress and the stress centers and the memory centers of your brain, which ultimately will help with stress responses and kind of help you if you're feeling maybe anxious or depressed and things like that. So there's tons of information online about tap therapy. It's definitely something that you can watch like a YouTube video and you can experiment with doing it yourself. You don't have to be a doctor or anything like that. So really cool resource, and so glad you mentioned that.
I wanted to thank you for coming up as well. And the shaking, we do that in, there's a joints and glands practice taught by the Himalayan Institute that I got my advanced teacher training from. And so I incorporate that a lot into the gentle yoga that I do. You're absolutely right. It's very therapeutic to the nervous system, and appreciate your vulnerability and you sharing, and hope that all things go well. I'll be believing with you for your highest and finest good. I went through a lot of similar things last year in my journey to getting back to my healthy self. And I know you will find your path and what's right for you. Just keep doing what resonates deeply as your own truth, because that is right. We are all really uniquely made up. We're this expression, right? We're all made up of this.
Tap therapy. It's definitely something that you can watch like a YouTube video and you can experiment with doing it yourself. You don't have to be a doctor or anything like that. So really cool resource, and so glad you mentioned that.
I wanted to thank you for coming up as well. And the shaking, we do that in, there's a joints and glands practice taught by the Himalayan Institute that I got my advanced teacher training from. And so I incorporate that a lot into the gentle yoga that I do. You're absolutely right. So I incorporate that a lot into the gentle yoga that I do. You're absolutely right. It's very therapeutic to the nervous system, and appreciate your vulnerability and you sharing, and hope that all things go well. I'll be believing with you for your highest, and finest good. I went through a lot of similar things last year in my journey to getting back to my healthy self. And I know you will find your path and what's right for you. Just keep doing what resonates deeply as your own truth, because that is right. We are all really uniquely made up. We're this expression, right? We're all made up of the same stuff, but this unique expression. All of our choices, our experiences, things that life throws our way, all these things affect and influence how we learn to manage our stress and how we go through things and how we kind of navigate the life around us. And so I love these conversations so we can learn further, grow with each other, kind of help each other along the way. It's really hard to be a human. It's a heavy burden for a lot of us, and we really can't carry the burden all by ourselves, right? I think that's the beautiful thing about friendship, is that we can kind of help each other carry the load. And some days you're going to help me a little more than I'll help you, but I hope to always return the favor. So thanks to everybody for sharing. Sierra, thanks for putting these conversations together so beautifully. I come walking away from them every week feeling uplifted, like I've learned a little something more, and really inspired to continue sharing.
Abby, I love how you said that. You basically just said that being a human can be burdensome. And I just love that because I totally second that statement. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like when you kind of say it that way, it has this negative connotation. Like being a human is like, a burden is something that we usually associate with like this negative weight that's kind of holding us down. But I actually think that's a great way to put it, because the human aspects of the human experience are absolutely burdensome. And I like to think about the human experience the way I like to think about how a rainbow kind of follows a terrible storm. It's like the rainbow and the storm are both a part of nature, and they're both beautiful and necessary in their own way. And the human experience is very similar. It's like you can't appreciate or be grateful for the good things in your life without having the bad experiences that kind of remind you that there's something to be grateful for and look forward to. So if someone is having a rainy day, or really the human experience is very similar. It's like you can't appreciate or be grateful for the good things in your life without having the bad experiences that kind of remind you that there's something to be grateful for and look forward to. So if someone is having a rainy day or a really, really bad storm right now, just know that the rainbow is possible. Just hold out for it. That being said, my friends, we are closing in on an hour. Boy, do these hours go by fast for our Mindful Business Thursdays. Holy cow. So we're going to get ready to close up the space. I want to thank everyone who's shared the last hour with us. It's been really awesome. For anyone who joined late, the conversation is recorded. So after I close this space, you'll be able to play it back from the beginning and listen to it. For anyone who wants to join us in the future, we do these spaces every single Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern. If you want to join us as a speaker, you're more than welcome to. And I think if there aren't any last minute speaker requests for anyone else who wants to add anything, I think we can start to close it up. Anything you want to add before we close out, Abby?
Not at all, other than yes, it's meaning burden, that it's heavy. It is heavy, but you are absolutely right. There, you can't really feel the lightness or appreciate that rainbow without the rain. And they're two sides of the same coin, and it's also very beautiful and nothing like it. And I'm so grateful for it. And I'm so grateful for it. And I'm grateful for our time together and for all of you friends. If you do feel that heavy burden, put it down for a while, dance in the rain, and learn to find that full in the moment, because tomorrow is not promised. Although I sure hope we get together next Thursday.
Me too, my friend. Alrighty then, I'm going to close out the space. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time, and I hope to see you all next Thursday. Have a lovely weekend.